It's tempting to say that artificial intelligence is having, as they say, a moment. But that would be really underselling it. There's something going on that feels existential. This technology's been in development since the 60s, but today AI is all around us, from
robotics, surveillance, face recognition and voice assistance,
to deepfakes and AI-composed music, poetry, even screenplays. It seems to be progressing at a rate that is truly hard to fathom, and nowhere is this more apparent than in the realm of visual art.
The development of AI that we've seen explode over the last year does have the potential to be a watershed moment in the creation of visual images and the kind of effect that that could have on culture.
AI first infiltrated the art world in 2018, when this work became the first AI-created portrait to sell at auction, fetching a tidy sum in the process. Then, a few months ago, a US game designer controversially won a state art prize using some heavy algorithmic assistance for this work. The recent leap in quality and accessibility has come about due to the latest batch of AI image generators. There are currently 3 main players, but many of the big tech companies are working on their own versions. And it's smashed open a can of ethical worms, testing the parameters and the very definition of art itself. But before we dive into the moral complexities of AI art, let's try to make some. Okay, so I've just logged into one of the latest AI sites. This one's called DALL-E 2, and apparently all you have to do is type in a bunch of keywords, also known as prompts, and it'll draw from billions of images scraped from the internet to generate your very own work of art. All right, I'm gonna go with 2 chihuahuas playing table tennis in space, a cubist style. So what I've discovered is that it's remarkably easy to make something eye-catching, even interesting, that also happens to be something I'm not really comfortable calling capital A art. And this is fairly indicative of what's out there.
Most of the work that's being produced is sort of fanboy art, that it's about reproducing stuff that already exists. So you've got people trying to reproduce, you know, Keanu Reeves. I don't know why he's so popular, but he is. Or there's like this kind of fetishist stuff with like Halle Berry. And then there's a kind of level where people are intentionally trying to reproduce the style of, say, an illustrator or an artist. That seems like a bit of a dead end to me. And then the next level is where people are trying to use these tools to produce things that have never been seen before. Because if you train yourself to understand how to enter the prompts, then you can get incredible results.
Hey, I'm Hilary from Sydney, and I work for a TV studio during the day. And at night, I like to make weird AI images and videos.
Hilary Camperlan is a director with a background in motion design and 3D animation, who's immersed herself in the recent wave of AI tech.
So often to make a prompt work out well, it sort of has to be a bit like an over-egged coffee order. You have to produce a long string of texts. So this one, for instance, is lots of 3D twisted animal balloons, hairy octopus, collectible toy, large eyes, glasses. This one above here was a porcelain sculpture of a futuristic woman made of splashing, flowing, twisting milk. I really like the ability to create anything you want. It has that sort of instant gratification to it. Every week there is something new with this technology. You know, new programs that do new things. Yeah, it's moving very fast.
Part of Hilary's interest in the tech is sharing images and ideas with the wider AI community.
So let's start with Beth Frey. So she's a visual artist from Montreal, and I love her work because it's just absolutely bonkers. There's a guy in Melbourne who's an architect, and I really liked what he was creating, and I could really tell that his prompts came from the fact that he was an architect in the first place. So there's people doing all sorts of things with it, and it tends to be just because we enjoy what it makes.
So would you call yourself an AI artist?
Definitely not, definitely not. I mean, you've got to admit that at least 80% of what's going on is still the computer.
Hilary's response here leads us to one of the main flashpoints in the AI debate. Can an image made by algorithms actually be called art? Or does it take us further away from a common idea of what art is all about? Human expression.
I'm fine with this being labelled art because to me art is a word that's extremely malleable and it can be applied to anything. It doesn't have a value judgment attached to it in my view. A lot of people look at AI as this kind of inhuman thing that produces uncanny images that have no connection to the world. I feel like that is undervaluing or ignoring the fact that AI is produced by humans. It is a software that has been written and created and curated by humans. Now the AI doesn't do anything until you interact with it. We're not looking at the technology just sitting there on its own creating culture. We're doing it. We're the ones who are producing it. The thing that excites me is where an artist or a filmmaker or whoever brings their eye, their aesthetic, their approach, and uses that tool to extend it and to create new things.
This is actually a slime mould sitting inside a helmet, and like the slime moulds I find interesting because that's a...
Sam Leach is an artist who's won both the Wynne and Archibald prizes. He's always been drawn to the intersection between science and art, and a few years ago started using AI as part of his art making process.
So that's as it was generated by the computer.
Yeah.
That's then been translated into the more fully finished painting.
For a 2020 exhibition titled Fully Automatic, Sam decided to let AI determine what he should paint next. That process involved feeding a data set of images, consisting of his own paintings, plus pictures sourced from art history, science and architecture, into a custom-made AI program, then painting some of the images that emerged. So they're quite pixelated.
Yeah. What I ultimately found was for making paintings, that low resolution was more helpful. It allowed me more scope to reimagine what was being presented, because I still want to have the handmade quality of the painting. That's important.
So it essentially leaves more up to your imagination.
Yeah. I'm really interested in non-human perspectives on the world. So looking at how animals see the world, or now that it seems to be possible for how machines see the world, and using those perspectives to broaden our own view. So being able to take that mathematical intuition and combine it with my own biological intuition, I think produces something interesting.
Sam's latest exhibition, titled Everything Will Probably Be Fine, looked more critically at the very AI models being used and how they might shape the future.
The big models are owned by just a handful of mega corporations, reflecting a fairly small mindset and a fairly small approach to building these models. So there's definitely going to be a bias and a skew happening.
Such biases, including racial and gender assumptions, are reflective of the very data sets that have been used to teach the AI, which means that stereotypes we'd hoped to leave in the past might be recurring under our noses.
That's been massively accelerated by AI, which is kind of fascinating and scary. And that's a vital role of artists, to explore that and expose it and help us to understand it.
Bias in AI is one problem. Another huge issue is intellectual property. That's because these data sets include people's faces, an artist's work, all scraped from the internet under the guise of research. So it's all too easy to lift the style of an established artist without consent or compensation.
So you can copy the French comic artist Moebius, almost exactly, or Chris Foss covers from 70s sci-fi paperbacks. Or you can copy, Japanese manga artists. If you're just doing it in tribute, fine, it just lives on the internet. What happens next, though, is the question, because are you going to try and pass it off as their work? Are you going to try and pass it off as your own original output? You can be sued for copyright infringement if you recreate the work of an artist, not copying their work, but doing it in the style of. Okay, so there's a few, warning signs on the road.
And what of the road ahead for artists, and in particular illustrators, whose labour might easily be replaced by a few prompts and a well-oiled machine? The technology is moving so fast that even in the time it's taken us to make this story, there have been some major upgrades, including text to video.
I feel like for certain professions, producing artworks in a commercial setting, it could be problematic. But on the other hand, these things always have a way of generating their own work.
There will be certain jobs that could just, you can create the work so much quicker in AI. There's still a human element that I don't think the computers can quite touch. It does worry me a little bit that what happens if children in the future decide that it's not worth learning how to draw because, well, I can just prompt something so quickly. Designers that I know are resistant to using it, but for me it's a question of, is it coming regardless? Should we be ahead of the curve and trying to get on top of it, or should we be resisting it as artists? It's a good question.
I think that the legal side of it needs to be worked out. I think there needs to be an ethical sort of relationship between this technology and artists who are working in the world already. I think it has to prompt a change in the way people think about the creation of art. It can't be stopped. It's just inevitable in some ways. Even this show could be completely replaced by an AI facsimile within, say, 2 years.
Well then, I guess that's it from me.
See you on the other side.